Hello fellow artists! What is the difference between hot pressed and cold pressed watercolor paper? Well, let me tell you. Hot pressed is ironed after it's dried, so it creates a really smooth surface, great for fine detail, colored pencil with solvents. I love it. Cold pressed is not ironed or smoothed out at all, and it has texture and it absorbs so much more water. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I did this snowman on cold press watercolor paper. You can also watch the full real-time tutorial on my Patreon page, patreon.com/mollysfineart. Let's get started.
Okay, so here is cold pressed watercolor paper wet on wet technique. What I did first was put a lot of water on the paper, just pure water. Then what I do is I grab some of the pigment on the brush, on a wet brush, and I apply on the damp paper. So you can see in the pink, I get a really nice bleed, and the blue will blend in with the pink. And this is where you're actually blending your paint on the paper. So you don't blend in your palette, you're actually mixing your colors on the paper. So that's a really fun technique with wet on wet. And you can see up in the sky area, it's very wet. And this is Payne's Gray. And now you can see that it's dried. Once it's totally dried, I'm using watercolor pencils to get the base layers of the snowman in. And then I'm using water to blend the pigment, the watercolor pencil pigment in. Now I'm doing another layer of Payne's Gray. I did not wet the paper first though, but I am using a very, very wet wash. A lot of water on my brush there. Now with the sun technique is fun. I create a real atmospheric type of a sky with a water bottle, which I'll show you here in a little bit. Now this is gouache, putting some white in there. Now for the background, I add some more water, just plain water first, very lightly, so I don't lift up the layers that are on there already. I'm adding some more Payne's Gray, and the whole plan is to add the trees while the paper is wet, so I get a distant type of atmospheric to the sky. And these are trees that I'm putting in with sepia and maybe even a little black there, because I know the paper is really white and it's going to bleed right in and lighten up a lot. There you can see how much the trees lightened up. Now, because it's completely dry in the background, I'm adding some colors for the sun, adding some water. That's Winsor yellow, Winsor red, adding some water here. Then while it's still wet, next to it, I think the paper is actually a little damp. The blue, the background is still damp. So I'm adding just a little bit, a couple more trees here, that I'm not happy with the sun. So what I do is a spray bottle, and I spray right in the center of the sun. It dried, it was starting to dry. I wasn't happy with it. Now I'm loosened everything up, and this is a great thing about cold press watercolor paper. You can kind of really just work it. If you're liking this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so I can make more videos for you. Thank you. All right, now the fun part with the gouache. Gouache is watercolor, just opaque, meaning it's not, you won't really be able to see the paper through it. So what I'm doing here is making snow, and that is called dry brushing. So I'm dry brushing the gouache on there to make like little snow caps. Now, while all that dries, I'm going back to the snowman, creating a little texture on his cap, adding some white gouache to his cap. And you'll notice I took off the masking fluid in the background. That's what those white dots are. And now that is going to look like snow. Time to get some detail on Mr. Snowman. So I did his eyes, his cute little carrot nose. And what I did first was wet that side of his face, cheek, I don't know what to call it. Then I dropped in some blue, and this is manganese blue. I used a lot for the reflection of the snow on the Mr. Snowman. So once I put that on, then I lift it up with a dry brush to get different values of the blue. When that dried, then I'm adding the mouth just with some sepia, maybe a touch of black, brown, adding the buttons, some brown and some sepia. The thing with watercolors is while one area dries, you work another area. While this area dries, you work that area. Now I'm going to be doing some splattering here next, and I want everything to be dry so the gouache doesn't absorb too much into the wet paper. So basically everything is really dry. I'm splattering with white gouache so it just sits right on top of the paper for the snow effect. I dab it up a little bit with some tissue just to get some different variations of the snow, and then with a wet brush I dab a few of the flakes, and there we have it, our finished snowman. Please let me know in the comments how you like the video, and stay tuned for the snowman on hot pressed watercolor paper. Thank you for watching.